about child abuse.
Yeah. Okay, I think we are live. Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Happy Thursday and happy April. Okay.
Hi.
All right. So, welcome back for another recording of Self-Care for Black Girls. I know we took a break in March. It was a busy month for the office. But we hope that the past 2 months have been treating you all well. And I don't know, did we ever announce the things that happened in March? Like the open house?
I don't think so. If you were, or if you are in the New Jersey area, Jersey/Philadelphia area, metropolitan, even Delaware, not too far, we have a wellness center. This is officially open as of March the 14th was our grand opening.
Mm-hmm.
We do different types of services, including not just mental health now, but also massage therapy, foot soaks. We also have a store with all kinds of body products as well as affirming Black girl products. And I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
Get on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned the massages as well.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in any of the services, do check out the websites and schedule a service.
You better get down here and get you one of those.
Yes. All right, and as you may already know, April includes Autism Awareness Day, World Health Day, and Earth Day as well. April is also Stress Awareness Month, Child Abuse Awareness Month, and Minority Health Month. So for today, before we dive in, I want to just offer a gentle content warning that today's episode will include a discussion of child abuse, childhood trauma, family harm, and the long-term emotional impact that this can all have on Black women in particular, because this group is for Black women and girls. So please take care of yourself as you listen, pause if you need, and come back when you feel ready. And of course, give yourself permission to step away at any point. All right, so because so many Black women are carrying wounds that began in childhood, wounds that were never acknowledged or never validated, and sometimes never even named, we hope to name them today and just talk about the experiences that Black women can have around child abuse. Okay, so first, just understanding what child abuse is. What comes to mind when you both hear child abuse? And I know we're clinicians, so it's a bit more.
Beatings, emotional neglect, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, cursing your kids out all the time, saying they ain't never gonna be nothing.
When it comes to mine, I guess neglect, emotional, physical, spiritual. I think neglect is a huge one that sometimes get overlooked. And then like that emotional connection that requires you as a parent or a caregiver to like really connect to a child. So sometimes it can be sort of like abandonment and rejection. That can be a form of abuse.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground for what we're going to highlight. I know for some people, when they hear child abuse, they may think of just severe physical violence, but like we both mentioned, it can include other forms, such as physical abuse, the hitting, excessive punishments, or even harm disguised as discipline. There's also the emotional abuse, which can include constant criticism, humiliation, rejection, threats, or even just being made to feel emotionally unsafe. There's also sexual abuse, and this can include any sexual contact, exposure, or coercion involving a child. And then, like Sharea mentioned, neglect, which is when a child's physical, emotional, or developmental needs are consistently unmet. There's also parentification, which I added here, which in some ways falls in line with neglect, where a child is forced to become emotionally responsible for adults in their lives. And sometimes the harm is visible, and sometimes it also leaves no outward marks, but a lot of those invisible wounds can still shape a person's entire life. And many Black women grew up in environments where these harmful experiences were normalized. It was either called discipline or just tough love or respect or keeping the family together. And a lot of these kind of notions make it feel as though you're responsible for what you went through when it really was not your fault. So even things like just being consistently yelled at, being parentified, or being emotionally dismissed, they can lead to you feeling like you're living in chronic fear, and that's not really healthy either. That is abuse, even if it's not called that in your relationships.
I think about it from the perspective of community too. I think some of these things that we just mentioned are normalized in our community. It's just part of growing up. It's part of children getting stronger, getting older. Like the parentifying for sure is a lot of times expectations of Black women and Black girls especially to grow up much quicker than their counterparts in school, where it's like you should be able to do certain things by the time you're 8. Most kids are still just playing, right? So even sometimes we think it is not just, we don't think it's abuse to normalize it because we think it's a part of culture. And it's a part of us just being Black or identifying within the Black diaspora. So I think it definitely can also be community based.
Absolutely.
For sure. And even to what you're saying, Sharea, sometimes it also plays into like notions of survival, where for a lot of Black women and even just young Black girls, if our parents were taught to survive growing up, then of course that's passed down to us, and the standards, those same standards and expectations are passed down to us in a way that doesn't allow for Black girls to just experience childhood and girlhood, where they just have to grow up from a very, very young age.
I remember my first client, this is going back about a million years, and she was 11, and her mother it was mandated reporting. I'm sorry, I think she's, 1 second.
Sorry, guys.
It was mandated reporting, and what that meant for mandated reporting was that she had to come, or excuse me, mandated therapy. So she had to come to court because they were, and I'm trying not to tell too much details, they were basically, they were found guilty of allowing her to be neglected, and it caused sexual abuse, ongoing sexual assaults and abuse by a paternal grandfather. And I remember first off, it was heavy for my first client. That's a whole nother story for another time, with very little support anyway. And I remember the first thing that the mother and I had a conflict was about trying to reset some parental expectations and all of that. And she told me that these are the things that she has to learn now because she went through it. So it was almost like this is a rites of passage for this daughter, even though it was even assault. And I knew at the time that I wanted to be more of an expert in trauma, but I didn't know that this was what it was going to take. And I'm trying not to give too many details just for triggering and those things. But what I do remember is that this conversation, although that was my first client, that was not my last time having that conversation, confirming that daughter, and I specifically talk daughter for a second because most of my clients were either females, and when I was meeting with the parents, it was mostly female clients. And so I remember that theme not just being with that first client, but being ongoing. And so I think that's important to remember, that we've normalized and now have an expectation that it's going to happen generationally.
Yeah, it's like that in some ways just becomes the standard for a lot of people, and that in itself is harmful because now we're perpetuating those same cycles, and we're creating environments where those same things are happening.
Creating environments. Right. I know we might not talk about that, but that's an extremely real factor when it comes to sexual abuse, or just abuse in general, but sexual abuse specifically, is that sometimes we're more vulnerable because we were vulnerable.
Yeah, completely. Okay.
I'm cold. Sorry.
Yeah, that's why I have my blanket.
Okay, so then we know 72 don't work.
I was cold as soon as you were turning it on.
Okay, I was cold, but I thought it was me because I'm always cold.
I mean, yeah, same actually.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, let me play it by ear. So we'll have to see where Alexis falls.
Yeah, I feel like she will be okay with this.
As I'm up here like trying not to shiver.
Sorry, do you want a blanket? Actually?
No, I'm okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so taking or going into why this conversation matters, we've kind of just highlighted why it matters, where we see it within our work.
Yes.
But also it's a very real thing for a lot of Black women, right? So we just want to, call it out and normalize it, and also validate anyone who may have experienced or may still be experiencing it right now. So yes, this conversation is especially important because Black girls often experience trauma within a unique social and cultural context. Black women often experience childhood trauma at the intersections of racism, sexism, poverty, community violence, as Sharea mentioned, and generational survival patterns, right? So what we've just kind of broken down right now, but even thinking about what it means to be Black, what it means to be a girl, what it means to be lower income in these different circumstances, it actively hinders or limits the resources that you have, as well as the access that you have to certain things, even in just being believed about what you're experiencing.
So it's multiple layers of why this topic matters for Black women and Black girls, because some of the patterns that we hold, we don't even realize we're continuing because no one thought it was worth breaking. And or we also silenced or learned how to silence ourselves.
Exactly. And even when it comes to the silencing, again, a lot of Black girls are subjected to what they call the adultification bias, which means that they're often seen as older, stronger, less innocent, and more capable of handling pain than they truly are. And this means that suffering is frequently minimized. A Black girl who is scared may be labeled as dramatic. A Black girl who's angry may be labeled as difficult. One who's hurting may be expected to toughen up, and then that message just follows her into adulthood.
And then we wonder why we don't talk about it, or we wonder why we can't bring it to our parents, our friends, even our community people that we care about or say they care about some of these topics. Even how they talk about it with you is always about putting you in a place or getting you to get through it versus looking at it as wrong.
And even getting you to get over it, not even get through it, but just get over it completely.
Absolutely.
Instead of being angry that this happened to you and taking lead to prevent it from happening again. Right. So support is very skewed in those kinds of contexts, and again, this just teaches a lot of Black women that being vulnerable is unsafe, and also they learn to survive by becoming strong, becoming responsible, high achieving, and emotionally self-contained. But then underneath that strength is a little girl who never got the protection that she needed.
Never got seen as a little girl. I wonder when we stop seeing our daughters as little girls, and when we do that for our young men. I know we're not specifically talking about young men in abuse, because there is some, I did work specifically with young men at a certain time in my career, and I learned very quickly that there is a lot of sexual abuse that happened. And I'm sorry, because that's my area of specialty people, so that would be my example probably more often than not. But what I did learn really quickly though was that how they even were seen was very different, and even when some of the abuse took place was different in terms of age. And so I wonder when little girls get told that they're no longer little girls, even if it's not verbalized, when in our minds do we switch over to say that you should get over this, or you should be past that stage?
It definitely is from a young age, especially when it comes to sexual assault. Because even little girls are adultified from a very young age. A little girl dancing in a certain way is automatically seen as provocative, automatically seen as her being hypersexual. But if you saw even a little white girl dancing in the same way, or even a little boy dancing in the same way, it wouldn't be seen in such a sexual manner. And then even as little girls start to develop certain body parts, going through puberty, automatically they're
labeled.
And their existence has changed in a lot of adults' eyes.
And whether we like it or not, we still use the word fast. And I'll say it because that's what I've heard people say, and I'm like, man, it's so, first off, it's so old school, but secondly, it's so stupid. Like, when does a little girl get fast? Like, she's just trying to express herself. She's just trying to have an experience like everyone else in this world that feels like freedom. And the first thing you do is make her out to be an adult, because that's the, not going back to that exposure, not that you were the adult who exposed her to items that probably were inappropriate in the first place to even make her even know how to do that dance, possibly. Not that it's your issue, it's theirs. So we quick to do the fault very early when it comes to young girls.
And I do think a lot of that fault and the blame also comes from the self-blame that a lot of adults did not process for themselves.
Absolutely.
Where in their mind they experienced this thing because they did these certain things or wore these certain things, so that they see to police it in their own, like the younger girls in their lives, as a way of saying, hey, like, learn from me without saying it, but like don't wear these things because it will lead to this thing happening, without recognizing that no, I should have been able to wear these things or do these things and not have been harmed.
It didn't matter what I had on. Didn't matter. Actually, this month is also Denim Day. It's Sexual Assault Awareness Month as well. But Denim Day is on the 22nd, and it literally, I mean, like there's tons of different exhibits that show different outfits that people had on when they were assaulted, and it's called Denim Day because a lot of the times I had on jeans and a shirt. I was just regular outfit, nothing fancy, quote unquote, what people stereotype it. But the reality is that I should be able to wear anything and not have my body being violated. And as a child, I should be able to learn or to grow without someone being able to hurt me physically, sexually, mentally, spiritually, whatever the case, and then tell me it's something that I did to deserve it. There should be no, this is what you did for it to happen. No, that person who did it was a bad person. They made bad choices that now will harm me for the rest of my life.
Absolutely.
Completely.
But I digress. I'm sorry.
No,
I am so off. I don't know where we are because I have to. I'm trying. I got the comments. I pulled it up.
It takes us actually right into the cultural silencing that happens and generational trauma. So everything that we're seeing is in alignment.
Okay. I was way off. I'm sorry.
No. There are these cultural narratives, like we're saying, that can make it difficult to talk about childhood abuse. Many of us grew up hearing phrases like, what happens in this house stays in this house, or that's just how your parents, or that's just how our parents raised us, and that's just what it is. And again, these survival-based parenting practices are passed down through generations without being questioned. They're just seen as a status quo. And as a result, pain is inherited, silence gets inherited, emotional disconnection gets inherited, and that's what we refer to as generational trauma. Of course, it does not excuse the harm, but it helps us understand how these cycles happen and how they continue to happen. So many caregivers were parenting from their own unhealed wounds. They may have given what they knew a lot of times, and sometimes what they knew was harm. And so that's just what they operate from. Healing requires for us to hold those two truths. Someone may have done the best that they could, and what happened to you may still have been harmful, and both of those can be true and be addressed.
And I think that's the hard part culturally, to be able to admit and not blame, but to admit that some of our parents and some of our caregivers did not have the skills to be parents, and they don't have the skills. I'm not even gonna say didn't. They don't have the skills, and as a result, they did harmful things because they didn't know that those harmful things would hurt. And I'm gonna put a little wrench in there. Some of them did, because they did know. Some of them did know that it would be harmful and it would be hurtful, because there is the reality that everyone has human experiences that may have also put them in the position to be hurt in the past. And so I think that's where it becomes a yes and, right? This could be true, and there could be some very serious harm that was done because there wasn't parenting skills, and there wasn't a reflection on, the community being able to say, this is not okay, what's going on there. And that being not just the sexual abuse, but physical abuse, the verbal abuse. The reality is that we know we shouldn't be cursing out our children, yet I could go into multiple places and hear kids being cursed at like they are 10 times their age. As if they could have an adult communication to understand first off what you're doing, but also be able to respond to you in a way, right? So I think, and they don't, some of them may not have known, and some of us should know better.
I think it's interesting because that is true, and that's also where, even as a therapist, I see that show up with a lot of my clients who are Black women, where, especially in this context of child abuse and perpetuating those cycles, where it's really hard for a lot of the Black women that I've seen to take accountability in that way. One, it's hard to use the word abuse
Absolutely.
Because they don't see it as that. They just see it as like, I just had to survive, my mom had to survive, and that's just what I was exposed to. And so even to call it abuse takes time.
Absolutely.
And then once we get to that point, we then look at their own parenting approach, and then we have to see how they themselves may have perpetuated the same abuse to their children. That again takes a lot of time, and it's a really emotional process, because you now have to see yourself within both contexts as a victim and an abuser, and that can, some people never get to that point of even accepting it.
Absolutely.
But it's work that needs to be done again as Black women, to be able to see how these patterns are following us and how they may continue if we don't intervene.
And if we don't intervene with ourselves and the children.
Yeah.
Right, because I think the reason why people say go get parenting classes or it's not because the child is responsible for the action. It's because as an adult, you have to now start making different decisions than what your childhood experience was. Right, so I always tell my clients, it's not an excuse, it's an explanation. This isn't an excuse for you to continue the behavior. It's an explanation for why the behavior exists. And so now we got to be able to make a new pattern so that you can create something new in your household with your children, and now it can go on to a new generational experience. And I think the hardest part is getting to the place of calling it what it truly is. I can remember again with some other clients where it took years to even admit abuse, that they were abused by their own parents, that person that they idolized and or put on a pedestal as the best mother ever maybe possibly wasn't, and didn't have the skills, but she did the best she could. Right, and so getting them to name it sometimes is the hardest of the work. And then getting them to acknowledge the consequence of naming it is that now we have to see it in our way we're experiencing our children, right? That you're now teaching your daughters the same lessons, just a different way.
Absolutely.
And then also self-forgiveness, because sometimes your children have grown up, and you cannot parent them again. And
you got no do-over.
Right? They might be preparing to have their own children, but even just working around that self-forgiveness of, I did this thing, and now maybe I talk about it with my daughter to work towards repairing that relationship.
Absolutely.
And just having to deal with it over time, right?
So the consequences
exactly.
of it. Because now your child might also not want to deal with you. Right? We have a lot of people going no contact. That's another story for another time. But some of that consequence comes because you never wanted to admit or take accountability for behavior that you did when you were harming your child.
All right, so now that takes us into looking at how childhood abuse shows up in adult Black women, which we've kind of also started to veer towards. So of course, childhood trauma doesn't simply disappear because we became adults. It often shows up in ways we may not immediately connect back to our childhood. And for many Black women, this can look like difficulty trusting other people, fear of emotional intimacy, people-pleasing behaviors, perfectionism, hyper-independence, chronic anxiety, emotional numbness, and also feeling responsible for everyone else. This can look like being the strong one, the one who never asks for help, the one who holds everything together, or even the one who keeps going no matter what.
It's interesting also because it's this feeling that you also can't be wrong, because now you have the one thing you can control, which is your adulthood. And so I think a lot of those same examples can fall under there, because it's hard to see that you're now trying to control the scenarios that you're in and how you participate in them. And so now I can never be wrong, and so I'm literally cutting people off. Everybody's always trying to be after me. Your paranoia, I know we never talk about this in the Black community, but there's a lot of suspicion that comes from racial trauma, stress that has to do with working in workplaces where people don't trust you and your expertise. There's a lot of suspicion that then travels into all parts of our life. And I think that becomes part of the undiscussed symptoms that we are not able to say that that's a real issue. But then when you look at some of the I'm trying to say a nice word for this one, some of the different forms of breakdowns that you see Black women experiencing, the label is anxiety now, when a lot of it was about trying to control the environment so it couldn't hurt me. But in doing that, I also then make no space for right or wrong, and that's black and white thinking.
Yeah.
For, you know, just from a clinical perspective. But now I'm stuck, and my relationships are harmed, and now I'm also then got to be right with the methods I'm using in my child rearing, even when they're harmful.
Yeah.
Right. I'm trying to not be direct in some ways, but it's when somebody just can't be wrong so much so that they're willing to hurt somebody that they love.
Yeah.
And usually the child is the one that gets it.
Yeah.
Right? You cursing them out, you telling them they ain't nothing, but you know that this hurt you. You know that your mother doing that to you harmed you. You're not willing to go do no work there, but you also can't be wrong when you're doing it.
Right.
It's not either or, it's that both. So
it's like a feedback loop where nothing productive happens from that mentality.
exactly.
But for some people, that's okay.
Yeah,
'Cause
survival.
That's like the norm.
And I think a lot of the examples that you use, they're just that, they're survival.
Yeah, definitely survival. Yeah. All right. So then, again, with all of this, it's important for us to also remember that strength, in this case, in the examples that I gave, are actually trauma responses. They are, like you said, Sharea, survival skills and a way of staying safe in a world that once taught you that your needs would not be met. For others, childhood abuse can impact romantic relationships. It may become difficult to recognize healthy love and what healthy relationships are. For some people, they may be in unsafe dynamics, but for them, that feels familiar. And when it comes to boundaries, it can feel difficult to actually stand firm on your boundaries or even to communicate them or identify them. So when chaos is what you knew, peace can initially then feel unfamiliar.
And I'm going to take this one from the abandonment. I think it's also like when you are used to, because I think when we see the physical and the physical abuse or the neglect, we sometimes can see that in relationships. But when we really think about like our emotional abandonment from our parents, we then translate that into our relationships with our partners. Either we become the one that avoids the emotional connections, or we allow them to and give an excuse for the disconnect, the lack of connection. And so a lot of that pattern comes from what you experienced as a child.
Absolutely.
And so I think for me, recognizing that emotional isolation was something that I had to know as part of my own experience with my own parents, that I didn't recognize it sometimes that I could do it in relationships. And so I had to do the work on myself, because I love love. Like I love the connection and I love the feeling of it. And I don't want anyone to feel like they're not getting the love they need in return.
Yeah.
And so being able to recognize that in myself from what my own experience was really by saying, look, my childhood experience around emotional neglect is serious.
Yeah.
And although it might not have seemed that serious, because I had these things, I got this stuff, and I got these things that look like the best opportunity in home. But that emotional connection mattered when it came to me forming healthier friendship. I'm not even just talking about intimate, because I think that's where we get lost too. I'm talking about friendships, emotional, like every part of them mattered, because I had to be willing to go in vulnerable enough to be able to connect on things that I never had to do. Right? Because people like me, I can have people around me, but am I connecting with them? And that came from me recognizing that I wasn't always getting what I probably should have gotten, and it wasn't purposeful. I won't say that from my own experience, but I also know that it also still doesn't excuse that it happened.
Yeah. Was that something that you saw within yourself, or did someone have to like call it out to you?
I think a mixture of both. The person who called it out, I didn't trust. In work that I did later, I recognized that even the person that I didn't trust had good information. Right? So yes and no. Right? I know that makes sense. The person who called it out was calling it out so they could win the war at the time. Right?
But they were speaking the truth.
But I couldn't let them win at the time. But later on in my own work for my development in terms of relationships and connections, and what I also desired to give in terms of getting, I realized that they were right. And that I could sometimes be cold and not recognize that. I didn't see it as that way. I wouldn't have labeled it that. But I also now look back and can say, oh, yeah, it was that.
Yeah.
And that ain't okay, because I wouldn't want that in return and then call it love. So yeah, it was a mixture of both. So he was right, but we ain't getting no credit.
He
Dude ain't getting no credit.
You been shot.
He was trying to use it to win the war.
Yeah, he was leveraging it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do like that you mentioned that, because it's also like what I see, like working with women and couples, when you talk about intimacy and attachment and how it goes back to childhood. And a lot of the times, if I'm working with someone who had like an anxious attachment, seeing how they use sex to pacify, to sort of win over, because they're used to having like love being transactional.
Yeah.
So if I show myself best, or this to show me that you love me, my parents gave me these things, or these things happened to me, or to show that I care about you, I give you my body, which then equates in an intimate relationship as solid sex. So you're only having sex to pacify the person. Or with avoidant attachment, if you have parents, like if you are emotionally disconnected, then it's like, oh, like I can take bodies down, which in society now is glamorized. Like it's like, oh, how many bodies do you got? Like that like, wow, you're a player, that's great. Where that we're not going deeper and saying, okay, well, there's also something under it. Yes, I do believe in sexual liberation and freedom, and for some people it can be that. And for others, we know that if we dig a little deeper, it's you are purposely not emotionally connecting to anyone else, and it stems from childhood.
Yeah.
But it's like we don't talk enough about that.
Yeah, because then that'll take away from the sexual liberation part, right? In terms of being able to see it as all or nothing again. Right. And in reality, nothing is all or nothing. Like that's the reality. There's gray when it comes to even those reasons behind why you might be taking an action, and the actions might still need to be taken. Absolutely. Right? Nobody's saying that part, but you should really understand why that choice is being made, because if the choice is being made from a place of harm or past trauma, then that means it's unresolved, and it's most likely going to have a negative consequence later.
Like it continues to show up. So now, if we're talking, or while talking about signs of unresolved childhood trauma, sometimes the signs may be subtle. You may notice that you struggle to rest. You may feel guilty when prioritizing yourself. You may constantly anticipate rejection or criticism. You may overfunction in relationships, like overextending yourself. Or you may even feel intense discomfort with receiving care from other people. A lot of these patterns are often rooted in early experiences where love, safety, and care felt inconsistent, or also felt conditional. And many Black women are carrying what is often called survival identities, where identities are built around competence, resilience, and self-sacrifice. And then, of course, while those qualities can help us to survive in life and maybe even to thrive in certain contexts, they may also be preventing us from fully living. So now, if we're looking at how to start healing and breaking the cycle, healing begins with naming what happened. Sometimes the first step is simply just allowing yourself to say, that hurt me. Even if others minimized it, and even if your family normalized it, and even if it happened years ago, your pain still matters and is still, prevalent in some way. Also, healing may involve therapy, especially when trauma-informed therapy that understands both trauma and the lived experiences of Black women. So maybe this means seeking a culturally sensitive therapist, maybe even a fellow Black woman therapist, or just a clinician who you feel heard around and you feel supported by. It may also involve reparenting yourself. This means learning to offer yourself the compassion, gentleness, and protection that you did not receive. And a lot of that work can be around inner child healing. It may sound like telling yourself you did not deserve that, you were a child, you deserved safety, and you deserved softness. Healing may also require boundaries, sometimes with family, sometimes with old patterns, and sometimes with the version of yourself that believes you must earn love through suffering.
And I think having that conversation ongoing with yourself is important. I think sometimes in the work that I've done with some of my clients, we can get there and we got there, and I might tell them once, twice, but what I find is very helpful is that for me to remind them and for them to remember that safety of language creates our mind and how we think about ourselves, And so even reinforcing it ongoing, like, you deserved a healthy childhood. It was not your fault. Like, certain things they need to keep being told to you, so that you can reinforce that I'm doing something new. I think when it comes to inner child healing, especially, we don't tell kids they're beautiful once. We continue to tell them, right? We should want to keep doing that for ourselves. And I think when we're doing this work, especially when it comes to childhood abuse related work, regardless of the type, you want to be able to frame it in a way that also continues to reinforce that you did not deserve this experience. You deserved better, regardless of who did it and who didn't keep you safe, and that you're safe in this moment now and safe enough to make new decisions. And repeating that whenever you are struggling. Because I think sometimes we think it's over once I told myself I didn't deserve it. But our actions are way more intrusive, just like thoughts, where they're in your life now so deeply that you gotta start actually activating a new way of thinking to be able to start creating new patterns.
Yeah, definitely.
So never stop telling yourself the truth.
And also remember that when it comes to breaking the cycles, it means choosing something different, and that means different ways of relating to people, caring, or even loving yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So to wrap up then, I hope that you've all walked away from this conversation knowing that what happened to you matters, the way that we've learned to survive makes sense as Black women, and also we must give ourselves permission to heal beyond survival. We are allowed to build a life that's rooted not just in strength but in safety, not just in resilience but rest, and not just endurance but joy. I hope that you all take care of yourselves. I think building off of this discussion, you can also continue with the reflections by journaling, by resting, or even reaching out to loved ones or support systems. You can even share this video with someone to spark conversations, or comment in the comment section to start a discourse around this, because again, we're spreading awareness, but also it doesn't have to end from this live.
And the more we talk about and do something different, the more we can have success and a new experience for generations to come. I think the things that we do matter, and how long we're willing to commit to them matter. So we need to keep recommitting to ourselves and recommitting to our health, our joy, our experience in this world as healthy. And for Black women, because many times we haven't had anyone give us that permission, I think it's important to give yourself that permission, that every day I get to try again, and I get to go back and watch some of these same tips or talk this conversation with my own girlfriends or my own therapist. I need to start really reinforcing that this is an ongoing process and experience that will help me to be better, and then ultimately help us as a community be better.
Sure. All right, so that takes us to the end, and we'll go to the wellness tips.
Drink your water, sis. Get your rest. I feel that right now. Get your rest, drink your water. Move your body. I did all those things today. Got my rest, like in the middle of the day. Move your body. I'm drinking my water. Make sure you're eating some things that are taken care of. We are going into the warm and hot season, depending on where you are. And hydration is important, but also making sure that we get it through nutrition, through fruits, vegetables, different things that can take care of our bodies so they can take care of us. Make sure that we are doing something mindful. Being present and being available to ourselves or in the moment can be helpful for our mind and our emotional self. Make sure am I missing?
Finding joy.
That was going to be my last one. What's that? Did I get all before then?
Vitamin D and self-compassion.
Vitamin D. Take a walk outside instead of being in the house this next couple of days, because we do have a couple of hot days in the East Coast, which means that most likely everywhere else probably got medium or hot as hell. And so enjoy it outside, get your vitamin D. For us to talk about trauma, and we want to connect it to that just for a moment, vitamin D is actually really helpful for mood and boost, and also making us feel better, so it can help us as we're journeying on our healing. And then find some joy as we talk such serious topics each month in different times. We don't always talk serious, but as we talk about this month being so heavy, make sure that you find some joy. Maybe this time is where you pull out that coloring book with your child. Maybe you sit down and you just be a child with your child instead of parenting them. And so that could also be an experience for both you and them in terms of trying not to correct and just enjoy. So find some moments of joy throughout the day, throughout your week, throughout your month, throughout your year, so that it can be a part of your life and your process.
All right, so now we move into gratitude. The question is, what are you grateful for? And if you're watching, you can also comment your gratitude points.
I'm grateful for community.
Same. That was mine too.
Grateful for community too. So I guess we'll all be community based. Like I'm grateful for a sane mind too. I was watching something yesterday that made me realize that people are getting sicker. So I'm grateful for a sane mind.
That's right. All right, and now for the affirmations. Again, I have some written down, but
For it.
all right. The affirmations that I wrote down were from this topic actually. So one, I deserved and deserve protection. I deserve healing in the present. I am allowed to build a life rooted not just in strength but safety. I deserve rest and joy. I give myself permission to heal beyond survival. And I will break, even if not all, but some generational cycles in my lineage. Any additional ones?
Those were great.
All right. So that's the end of today's Self-Care for Black Girls. We hope that you have enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one.
All right, y'all. Be well.
Be well.
Yeah.
Bye.